Well, time for a hot topic discussion here at the Live Lounge, where we're going to try and determine what is the greatest darts match of all time. And joining me to discuss this matter, two people from different generations, I think it's fair to say, former World Youth Champion Keegan Brown and legendary darts referee Paul Hinks. I know you guys have had your thinking caps on. I'll start with you, Paul, because you've seen more darts matches than the other two, no offence. But what immediately springs to mind when you ask that question?
There's quite a few that actually do spring to mind, and whatever I say, people are going to argue the point that, well, something else is better than that. But one that does spring to mind was at Circus 7, the World Final, with Phil Taylor against Raymond van Barneveld, which went the distance, and when they bowled up, Phil hit the 25, and apparently Raymond actually used the 25, the dart in the 25 to bounce off and get the ball, take the deciding leg and go on to become world champion.
And that actually changed the rules of the sport, didn't it? It changed the bullseye rule forever after that.
Yeah. I can also remember another incident, another match, which comes to mind. When the draw was actually made for the World Championships at the Alexandra Palace, a draw came out with the fastest two players in darts at that time. And the tournament director at the time, Tommy Cox, was to say, I've just got the referee for that. And I ended up actually doing that match. And it was against Jelly Clarkson against Vincent van der Voort.
Oh, wow.
Which also went the distance. And at that time, when they were actually bowling up, whoever threw first, the referee had to put like one of the coloured pins in the board to mark where the first start had gone. You probably don't know that, Keegan.
Oh, I didn't know.
And they were that quick. I can't remember actually taking the pin out before the last leg took place. Vincent won the ball, and he went on to win that particular match.
Wow, incredible. Paul mentioned, Keegan, that match that sprung to my mind as well, the 2007 World Final. Is that the one that comes to the forefront for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think it had everything. Obviously, Phil was 4-0 up. Barney got it back to 4-4, and then I think Barney went 6-5 up. And then, it was just, for anyone getting into darts, watching darts, that was, I don't want to say the game of the century, but it had everything for it as such.
The drama as well. And in that last leg decider, Raymond van Barneveld hit a 180. Sorry, Phil Taylor hit a 180, and Barney answered it, didn't he, in kind. To do that in a sudden death decider in a world final, it takes some bottle, doesn't it?
Yeah, of course it does. 100%.
A lot of matches that spring to mind must involve Phil Taylor, because he was the greatest player ever to pick up a dart, 16 times world champion. Can you think of any wins for Phil Taylor? Obviously, we've picked a defeat there. It's a bit unfair on him, isn't it, that really spring to mind as a really great game.
Even now, I don't think people realise how good it was the 2010 Premier League Championship final between him and James. And obviously, Phil hit the 2-9 darters. And people don't realise that each time when Phil hit the 9, James was on the finish. So it couldn't very easily.
And he won by 2 legs, didn't he?
And he won by the 2 legs,
yeah,
which were the 2 9s. And I think people don't realise, one, how good Phil Taylor was to hit 2 9 darters, and I don't think people don't realise how good James Wade was to come that close to winning with somebody hitting 2 9 darters against you.
Absolutely. And Paul, you refed a match that had 2 9 darters in it as well, didn't you? Do you want to tell us about that one?
Yeah, the World Grand Prix at the City West in Dublin. Between James Wade and Robert Thornton.
Wade again.
Yeah. Double in, double out. Both players actually hit a 9-dart finish, which was like double in, double out in the match. Something that can only be equalled, it'll never be beaten again, i.e. both players actually hitting it in the same match. And, well, the rest is history on that one.
Phil Taylor, again, it coming to my mind, 2013 Grand Slam against Adrian Lewis. Remember that one? 180, just all the way through the match. I think Adrian Lewis had to average 111 and lost the game, not by a small margin, 16-9 in the end, 111 average.
It's like playing a computer, isn't it? No, I think that's the thing, we look at a lot of Phil's games because he was the talisman for a lot of years with the BDC, and even now you don't realise how good he was. Every time somebody was coming near him, he was then setting the bar again and then setting it and setting it and setting it. And it's actually quite nice to be talking about the matches because, it sounds awful, but it is yesterday's news. But when you start looking back and seeing what people did, especially Phil, you just have to take your hat off to him.
Yep, another player dominant in the sport, not quite as much as Phil Taylor, but for a spell, he was winning everything, and you were playing in the era as well, Michael van Gerwen. And a little bit like when Phil Taylor lost, when Van Gerwen lost, it was a big shock. That 2016 World Championship defeat to Raymond van Barneveld, what a story that was.
Yeah, I think it was weird because everyone assumed Michael was going to front runner, and then Barney of yesteryear comes back like he did, and it was only a couple of years ago he did the same to obviously Gezi Price at the Grand Slam. So these old dogs, they can still play darts, can't they?
It was a sort of Rocky Balboa story, wasn't it, that one? Let's just go back a little bit further, Paul. People talk about Keith Deller's world title win. That match was up there, wasn't it, for the way it ended? And he was such an underdog before that match against Eric Bristow. Yeah,
definitely. Eric had a shot to win the match. Didn't actually attempt it. Keith sat on 138. Comfortable and takes 1-3 out to win the world title.
Yeah, 1983, Deller winning the world championship. Do you have any other games from that sort of era that really stick in your mind as brilliant matches? I suppose that's always regarded as a brilliant moment, but is there any game that really sticks out and you thought, wow, that was a corker?
I can recollect the quadro board coming in. And I actually went to the finals at, can't remember the name, the Blue Dolphins, something like that, in Chesterfield. And the final was Dennis Priestley against Jockey Wilson. And Dennis went on to beat Jockey 6-1 to win the quadro title then. Personally, I would have loved to actually got up there and refereed on a quadro board. It would be quite interesting. Yeah. I know Bruce Spenley did, and he said, wow. But yeah, I'd have to go up there and have a go on one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Keegan, what about when you first started watching darts? Any games that stick in your head?
There's two, and ironically, they both come from the BGO. I remember watching my first game of darts I properly watched. I remember how it actually worked, how darts worked for the first time, was obviously Chris Mason and Martin Adams at 19.9, so that would have been at Lakeside. And I think the second one, and I don't think another one where, God bless him, I don't think people didn't give him the credit, was when Andy Fordham beat Barney in the semi-finals that year to then beat Merv in the finals to become world champion. I think, that semi-final, he played I think, Barney was the number one seed going into Lakeside. And I think, even Merv was, high up there to beat, I think there might have been 1 and 2 in the world. So, for Andy to do that back-to-back days, no rest, takes some doing.
Let's try and find some sort of criteria here then, if we're going to try and rank, say, the top 3. What makes a great darts match? We'll start with you, Paul. What ingredients go into making a great darts match?
I would say both players playing well at that time. Probably the game actually going the distance, and the averaging and the crowd getting behind these people, because what they're seeing they just probably can't believe. And then going on to just witness something what they'll remember probably for the rest of their lives, as well as the players who was actually playing in that.
Well, the games that we're still talking about in this conversation now, a lot of them aren't there. What about you? Is there anything else you would add in there?
No, I think Paul's absolutely hit it on the nail there. What makes a good game of darts is 2 good players, and it's as simple as that. And, if they're both playing well, it's enjoyable to watch. It's easy on the eye, isn't it? I remember watching, a game like Gary Anderson. We had Gary and Adi in full flow. How easy is it to watch? It's too easy to watch, isn't it? And I think that's the thing with a good game of darts. When 2 players are on form, you can't beat it.
It's interesting what you remember, isn't it? Because you mentioned Gary Anderson then, and 3 games come to my mind. The World Final, when he beat Phil Taylor. The moment everyone remembers is the 180 on the floor from that final. The marathon match play final against Mensa Suljevic could still be going on now if they didn't introduce that tie-break rule eventually. It went on. Yeah, did it? Yeah. It was a long one, wasn't it? Yeah. And also, and this for different reasons, that 2018 Grand Slam final, which you also did, against Gerwin Price, because Paul, maybe not a match littered in quality, but it's one that's going to stick in everyone's mind for a long time.
Yeah, definitely stick in people's minds, that game, because not long after that they played one of the Will final. which I did that as well.
Yeah, and
That was
again,
behind closed doors at the
That was
2020,
very good, wasn't it?
2021.
yeah, Ali Pali when you got the raised walkway and all that. And again, people remember that because someone's
Yeah.
winning the world championship
Yeah.
and there's no crowd there to see it. But there's a great moment, wasn't there, when Price walked all the way down the walk-on and sort of had a look at the trophy when he was there and
Yeah.
ended up finally crossing the line after missing a lot of darts at double.
Yeah.
So sometimes missed doubles make great darts matches.
Yeah, of course it does. And even today, when you get a couple of players and they start getting a bit edgy, it's more tension. And when there's tension, people, it's like an old-fashioned Roman, wrestling match. It's exciting. People like it. But you don't want to be in that situation because I can tell you it's absolutely terrifying.
I want to throw another one in as well. World Cup of Darts. The match between Australia and England, Phil Taylor, Adrian Lewis, Simon Whitlock, Paul Nicholson, every single player on the stage had darts at double to win the match before England finally did that. That gave us great drama, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I can recollect it. It's not up here, but I can remember it. I was there, I think, when it was played. I don't think I refereed the final though.
You remember that one?
Yeah, I do. I actually think that was one better. And even now, it was always on the promos for a couple of years at the World Cup. Is when Spain beat England.
Yeah.
When obviously Spain didn't just beat England, they beat number 1 and 2 in the world
Yeah.
in the first round.
That was Phil Taylor and James Wade, wasn't it?
I think it was the year it was snowing, wasn't it? And was it Sunderland?
It was really cold.
Yeah.
I can remember it. Me and Bruce actually refereed that. We're up in Sunderland.
Yeah, it shouldn't be the right climate for Spain, should it, in Sunderland? But they got the job done. Right, on our personal experiences, referee, player, commentator, do you have a match in mind, the greatest game you've ever refereed?
Quite a few, but two players we've actually just mentioned, Gary Anderson and Michael van Gerwen. I actually did a World Series final out in Dubai when they used to play on the outside tennis court, and both players actually got to the final. 40 degrees heat when we set out to actually do that game. The match went 11-10 to Gary Anderson, and both players averaged over 100 in the actual match. I can remember coming off into the air conditioning, picking my suitcase up, going and getting on a minibus, and we travelled on the minibus to the airport, got changed in the toilets, and got a 7.5 hour flight back to England.
Amazing what you
But what a match that was.
And it was outdoors, wasn't it? People
Outdoors,
forget that,
yeah.
And didn't Gary Anderson actually use slightly heavier darts to try and counter any potential
Counter
draft?
the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
What about you? A great game you've played in? There must be one, Keegan.
Oh, yeah. It's hard. I think for me, it's a bit of a selfish thing. It was I played Phil in a Players Championship back in Dublin.
Phil Taylor, this
Phil Taylor, and I'll be honest, he was always my idol growing up playing darts. I went 1-0 down and beat him 6-1, and I think that, and I just remember I didn't know what to do because you're like, I've beat my hero, what do you do? And yeah, I can just remember being absolutely shell shocked for about 3 weeks after that and being completely stunned. But yeah, I think nobody's ever going to take that victory away from me.
Yeah, well, for me, I mean, we've all mentioned it, and this is quite an obscure one in terms of a darts match because it involved a player called Ryan Murray. But you mentioned the 2-9 darters that you refereed. You mentioned Phil Taylor hitting 2 in the Premier League final. I actually had the privilege to commentate on Michael van Gerwen hitting 2-9 darters in the same match in a Pro Tour event, and that happened.
Up in Wigan, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was up in Wigan.
Yeah.
I can't even remember the year, but it was
I
probably
think
8 or 9 years ago now.
I'm going to go. I think it was a UK Open qualifier. It was one of the first 2017. I'm going to go for
17. I think you are right.
yeah.
And that was just incredible. Just unthinkable to happen. Because as a commentator, you try and prepare for a game, and you can't prepare for something like that.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. Obviously, great matches. It takes 2 players, but you must have in your mind a performance of your own. You've hammered Michael van Gerwen on Euro Tour stages and things.
Yeah. It's weird because you forget how good players are when they're number 1 in the world. And looking back now, I did beat them twice in that year, didn't I? Just before COVID, and it's weird because you don't, until somebody tells you, you kind of forget about it because they all kind of blur back into one. And Yeah, I think, you know, if somebody could tell me a couple other matches, that would be helpful, because I can only think of about a handful at a time. But yeah, that's, you know, you remember the good ones rather than the bad ones.
Let's just throw a few more out there, maybe for our audience to get involved in. Drop it in the comments under this video if you can think of any. The one that's springing to my mind that we haven't mentioned, Rob Cross against Michael van Gerwen in that World Championship semi-final. The whole story, Rob Cross, that was his debut World Championship, goes on then to beat the GOAT in the final in Phil Taylor. But the drama in that semi-final was astonishing.
Yeah, it was unreal, considering, I think, Michael still had, 3 or 4 match starts to beat him. And, you know...
And they were on the wire, by the way.
And they were on the wire. You know, you couldn't put a fag paper in between them. But yeah, I think the telltale sign in that match, I think Michael hit the 180 to leave 81 and Rob took out the 161. And I think to make it, you know, 3-3 is a level game, 4-2 is a different game to Van Gerwen.
Right, let's try and settle this. Which games are right at the top of our thing? We all thought of the same one at the start, didn't we? The 2007 World Final. Maybe because it was a World Final, all that drama, the impact it was, Barney coming in, beating Phil Taylor. Is that the one that sits right at the top?
It's hard to debate otherwise, because it wasn't just a first round in the Players' Championship. It was the final day of the season. It was, you know, our World Championship final. You ain't going to beat it.
And there have been some great World Finals. Painter and Taylor played a sudden death leg as well. There've been some brilliant ones. But it just goes to show that it's not always just about, because we talk about it a lot, Paul, averages in darts. It doesn't mean that 2 players have had to average 115 throughout the match, does it, to have got a great spectacle?
No. Another great final was Dennis Priestley when he beat, it were a bit one-sided, when he beat Eric.
Oh yeah, 6-0, didn't he?
6-0.
Yeah, 6-0 at Lakeside. Yeah.
And that year, Dennis went on to win 13 titles, believe it or not.
Absolutely. And recently as well, with finals we've seen, just very recently, Mike Dedecker, that final against Luke Humphreys in the World Grand Prix, different kind of final because he raced away, Humphreys is coming back, but there are very different kind of games that count as classic darts matches. Are we all agreed then that we're sticking with it? 2007 World Championship final when Raymond van Barneveld beat Phil Taylor in a last leg decider. Going with that?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
There we go. Well, we've made our decision, but tell us what you think. Type in the comments below. What is the greatest darts match of all time?
My dad's disabled. I'm his main carer. My dad had a fall whilst I was away. There's another worker there. It's quite hard to relax sometimes when you're actually not at work. My parents split up. I just kind of took it how it was, really. It didn't faze me, I don't think. 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays, so it was just a bit like that, really.
Sometimes I feel like I get more lucky if I wear my lucky trousers.
Yeah, I was gaining like 10,000 subs a month in lockdown.
I got picked on for being different, but when I played darts, I was allowed to be me.
Like, oh, you're running around like a madman, and blah, like, yeah, never seen you so happy. I was like, what?
I did actually give him a little bit of advice. Can you remember what I said, Mason?
So stop moving your body.
No, said stop missing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to actually. I'll put it there later. I'll end up pulling it off the wall. I told you.